Daniel stepped off the sleek silver transport that had carried him from Earth to the heart of the alien planet, his boots crunching lightly against the smooth marble of the palace courtyard. The air shimmered with an almost unreal glow, a mixture of the planet's twin suns reflecting off the crystalline towers surrounding him. He paused for a moment, letting the grandeur sink in. Nothing on Earth could have prepared him for this. The palace guards, tall, strong beings with luminous eyes, watched him silently as he walked toward the main gates. They spoke in a language he didn't understand, but the motions were polite, almost formal. Daniel had been briefed extensively, yet being here felt surreal. The humans in his delegation whispered among themselves, their voices low with nervous excitement. He clenched his jaw. He had to appear confident. He had to prove that humans, small and seemingly fragile as they were, could hold their own in this world of towering, advanced beings. Inside the palace, the corridors were vast, stretching further than his eyes could follow, lined with tapestries depicting the history of the alien empire. Statues of past rulers, their forms elegant and otherworldly, stared down at him as he passed. Daniel felt small but not insignificant. He reminded himself that humans had a unique strength, resilience, courage, and heart. Traits that no technology, no matter how advanced, could replicate. Finally, he reached the grand audience chamber. At the far end, seated upon a throne of gleaming crystal, was Queen Seraphina. She looked every bit the ruler he had imagined, tall, graceful, with skin that shimmered faintly under the light. Her eyes, a piercing shade of violet, scanned the room and landed on him. For a brief moment, he felt a spark of recognition, as if she saw more than the human diplomat. She saw him. The queen rose slightly, inclining her head. The room hushed. Daniel straightened his back, bowing respectfully. He had been trained in etiquette, but he hoped his actions conveyed sincerity, not just formality. Seraphina studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. Yet there was something in her eyes that made his pulse quicken. He noticed her observing his every move, from the way he held himself to the small gestures that betrayed his nervousness. Humans often underestimated their own subtle communication, but she seemed to notice everything. "Welcome, human." Her voice echoed across the chamber, smooth and commanding. "You have traveled far." Daniel nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. I come in peace on behalf of Earth. We wish to learn, to share, and to build trust between our worlds." Seraphina's lips curved into a faint smile. "Peace is rare. Courage even rarer. You show both in merely stepping into this hall." Daniel felt a warmth spread through him at her words. Rarely had a stranger, much less an alien queen, acknowledged him so sincerely. He swallowed the nervous lump in his throat and replied, "I believe in the power of understanding, and I believe that humans, small as we are, can make a difference." The queen's violet eyes flicked toward her advisors, then back to him. She seemed intrigued, almost amused by his confidence. "Bold words," she said softly. "We shall see if your actions match them." Before more could be said, a sudden alarm blared through the palace. Red lights flashed and the doors burst open. A group of rogue aliens, unarmored but fast and aggressive, stormed into the chamber. Shouts filled the air. Daniel's heart pounded, but he didn't hesitate. He rushed forward instinctively, pulling a fallen guard behind a marble pillar and positioning himself between the queen and the attackers. The queen's eyes widened, not in fear, but in surprise. No human had moved so quickly, so decisively in her presence before. Daniel ducked a swing from a rogue's clawed hand and grabbed a fallen ceremonial blade. Though it was unfamiliar, he used it with precise force, his human intuition guiding him in ways no training could. "Stay behind me," he shouted to the guards, and they complied, hesitant but trusting his lead. The chaos lasted only moments, but those moments felt like hours. Daniel's movements, fueled by adrenaline and determination, managed to disarm one attacker, push another back, and shield the queen from harm. Seraphina watched silently, analyzing his every motion. This human was not strong by alien standards, but he was clever, brave, and unafraid. He was not merely surviving, he was making a difference. When the last rogue fell unconscious, the chamber was silent except for heavy breathing. Seraphina stood, stepping from her throne with a grace that contrasted Daniel's hurried human movements. She approached him, her eyes softened. "You were reckless," she said, almost a whisper. Daniel straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "Perhaps, but I couldn't let anyone harm you." Her gaze lingered on him longer than etiquette demanded. "No one has ever done that for me before," she admitted. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Her advisors shifted uncomfortably. The Queen was not prone to personal sentiment in public, yet here she was, acknowledging a human's courage openly. Over the next few days, Daniel remained in the palace, working alongside the Queen and her advisors. He observed the routines of the court, noting the strict hierarchies and unspoken rules. He saw the Queen in moments of vulnerability, the way she reviewed reports late at night, her fingers tracing maps of distant territories, the tired set of her shoulders after endless meetings. Humans were small and fragile compared to her, yet he recognized in her the same weight of responsibility that humans carried in their own leaders. Serafina, in turn, watched Daniel carefully. She had always been surrounded by beings who sought her favor or feared her wrath. But Daniel was different. He did not seek power. He sought understanding. He did not act out of fear. He acted out of principle. And, strangely, he laughed easily, smiled genuinely, and asked questions that others never dared. His humor was awkward but sincere, and it reminded her of a side of life she often ignored behind royal duties. One evening, as the twin suns set, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet, the Queen invited Daniel to walk with her along the palace gardens. The alien flora glowed faintly, lighting their path in surreal colors. Daniel marveled at the strange plants, but more so at the calm, thoughtful Queen beside him. "You do not fear me?" Serafina said softly, almost as if she were testing him. "I do not fear you," Daniel replied honestly. "I respect you, and I think fear rarely helps anyone accomplish what they truly want." She stopped walking, turning to face him. Her eyes, normally sharp and commanding, were gentle. "You are unlike any human I have known," she said, "and unlike any being in this palace." Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. He wanted to respond, to say something clever or meaningful, but words failed him. He only nodded, unsure how to convey the mix of honor, excitement, and confusion he felt. Serafina continued, "In all my years I have known strategy, power, and loyalty. I have known fear and I have known betrayal. Yet, seeing you act without fear, seeing you care without expectation, it is unfamiliar. And it is compelling." Daniel's chest tightened. He had faced countless challenges on Earth, but none like this. None had been so personal, so immediate, so intense. And he realized in that moment that the Queen's attention was not simply curiosity. It was recognition. She saw something in him that others could not. The following day, the palace buzzed with whispers. Guards spoke in hushed tones, attendants passed along rumors, and advisors debated in corners. The Queen's fascination with the human diplomat had not gone unnoticed. Some were wary, some curious, and some openly skeptical, yet all agreed. Daniel had changed something in the palace. Daniel himself remained unaware of how much attention he drew. He continued performing his duties with sincerity, helping in small but significant ways, advising on security, sharing Earth knowledge, and mediating minor disputes. Each action earned him more respect and subtly more trust from the Queen. And then the moment that would forever alter the palace's course arrived. During a council meeting to discuss territorial disputes and diplomatic negotiations, Serafina's advisors pressed her again to choose a suitable alien suitor. Political stability, tradition, and alliances hung in the balance. Every eye in the room expected a typical answer, her usual diplomacy, her usual restraint. Instead, Serafina leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on Daniel. She spoke softly, deliberately, yet with a weight that silenced every voice in the chamber. "I have not made my choice based on politics or fear. I have watched and I have learned and I have decided." Her words trailed, leaving the room hanging on her every syllable. Daniel's pulse raced. He did not yet know what she would say, but something deep within him told him that the Queen's choice might defy everything the palace had ever expected. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down, not as a duty, but as an undeniable human connection forming in the midst of royal grandeur. As the meeting adjourned and whispers grew louder, both Daniel and Serafina knew that the days ahead would not be easy. The palace would not accept decisions that defied tradition. But in that moment, beneath the glittering chandeliers and among the echoes of astonished courtiers, the first seeds of a story, one of courage, trust, and perhaps even love, were planted. The human had proven his worth not just as a diplomat, but as someone capable of touching a queen's heart. And the queen, for the first time, had begun to see the possibilities of a future she had never imagined. The day of the Grand Council arrived and the entire palace buzzed with anticipation. Courtiers, advisors, and diplomats filled the massive chamber, their colorful attire reflecting the twin suns outside. Rumors of the queen's interest in the human had spread like wildfire, and many wondered if she would reveal her thoughts publicly, or quietly dismiss them, as tradition demanded. Daniel stood near the back of the chamber trying to remain calm. He had been briefed to observe, to take notes, to provide input if necessary. But nothing in his training had prepared him for the magnitude of what was about to unfold. He felt every eye in the palace on him, though he tried to look composed. He reminded himself to breathe, to focus on the facts, not the spectacle. Serafina entered, her presence commanding silence. Even the sun seemed to pause, casting long shadows across the polished floor. She moved with a regal grace, her robes flowing like liquid starlight behind her. Every advisor, every guard, every alien dignitary straightened, their attention riveted. When she finally reached her throne, she paused. Her violet eyes swept the room and finally rested on Daniel. In that gaze there was no formality, no protocol, only honesty. The hum of whispers ceased, replaced by a tense, expectant quiet. "I have listened to counsel," she began, her voice strong but calm, "and I have considered alliances, traditions, and obligations." Her eyes shifted slightly toward her advisors, acknowledging their presence, yet she held her ground. "But I find that none of these can guide a decision of the heart." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Daniel's pulse quickened. His mind raced, trying to anticipate the next words. Serafina's advisors exchanged hurried glances, fear and disbelief flickering in their expressions. Then she said it. The words that no one in the palace had dared to imagine. "I wish you were my husband." Human. The chamber erupted into chaos. Courtiers shouted, some in disbelief, some in outrage. The advisors scrambled, whispering fiercely to one another, questioning the queen's judgment. Aliens stared at Daniel as though he were a ghost or a deity. How could one human, fragile and small compared to them, merit such a declaration? Daniel stood frozen, the weight of her words settling in. He looked at Serafina, searching her face for any hint of jest or sarcasm. But her gaze was steady, sincere, and unyielding. She had chosen him, not as a token, not as a pawn, but as the one she wanted beside her. "Your Majesty," Daniel began, unsure how to address such a revelation. His voice trembled slightly, but he steadied it. I do not know what to say. I am honored, truly, but—" He faltered, aware that words were insufficient for the enormity of the moment. "I never imagined a human could be chosen by a queen." Serafina's lips curved in a faint, amused smile. "And yet you have been. You have proven that courage, honesty, and compassion transcend species, tradition, and expectation." She gestured subtly to the gathered council. "This decision is mine alone. It is not dictated by politics nor by fear. It is guided by my heart." The room remained silent, the tension thick. Some courtiers whispered furiously, plotting opposition. Others stared in awe, struck by the unprecedented declaration. A few guards, loyal to the queen, exchanged subtle nods. They had always known that Serafina's choices were her own, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. Daniel felt a surge of emotion he could barely control. He had faced danger, negotiated alien politics, and survived unimaginable circumstances, but nothing had tested him like this moment. He wanted to speak, to convey that he accepted her choice, that he would stand by her side no matter the consequences, yet the enormity of the declaration left him speechless. Finally, he found his voice. If you truly wish this, Your Majesty, then I will honor it. I will stand with you not as a diplomat, but as someone who respects and admires you." Serafina inclined her head, her eyes reflecting relief and approval. "Then we begin a new chapter, human. One not bound by expectation, but by truth and understanding." The advisors murmured nervously. One elder, the head of foreign affairs, stepped forward cautiously. "Your Majesty, may I ask how this will affect alliances, treaties, and political stability?" Serafina's expression hardened. "I am aware of the risks, but no alliance is stronger than the conviction of a ruler. The human is not here to replace tradition, but to complement it. His courage and wisdom are already evident, and he will prove himself further in the challenges to come." The elder hesitated, then bowed slightly, acknowledging her authority. The rest of the council followed suit, some reluctantly, some with curiosity. Daniel sensed a shift in the palace's atmosphere. While many still questioned, the seed of acceptance had been planted. The queen's conviction was absolute, and that alone carried weight. Over the next days, preparations began for formal recognition of Daniel as the queen's chosen companion. The palace underwent subtle transformations to accommodate human presence. Smaller chairs at council meetings, adjustments in the royal gardens, and lessons for Daniel on courtly etiquette. He absorbed everything eagerly, learning about alien customs while sharing human practices. The exchange was fascinating, bridging the gap between two very different worlds. Serafina continued to observe him closely. She was impressed not only by his adaptability but by the way he approached challenges. He questioned respectfully, offered ideas thoughtfully, and never sought to dominate or outshine others. In a court often driven by hierarchy and fear, his presence was a fresh, invigorating influence. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, Serafina asked, "Do you fear what comes next, human?" Daniel glanced around, taking in the alien flora that glowed softly under the twin suns. "I won't lie," he said. "It's overwhelming. Your people, this palace, everything. But I do not fear being with you. That seems worth any challenge." Serafina's expression softened, and she reached out to brush a faint luminescent petal from his shoulder. Few have spoken with such honesty. Few have faced the unknown without hesitation. I find myself grateful, human, and more than grateful. Daniel felt a strange warmth spread through him. Humans were not accustomed to such direct emotion, yet he sensed the sincerity behind her words. In that moment, the barriers between species, between worlds, seemed to fade. The palace soon faced external challenges: a border dispute with a neighboring planet, a crisis in the supply of vital resources, and the lingering disapproval of certain nobles. Daniel rose to each occasion with ingenuity and courage. He devised solutions using human logic, sometimes clashing with alien convention, but always with respect for the queen's authority. Each success earned him greater admiration and slowly, grudging acceptance from the palace council. Through these trials, the bond between Serafina and Daniel strengthened. She began to see him not only as a companion, but as an equal partner. His presence inspired loyalty among the palace staff and even softened some of the more rigid advisors. Aliens who had once doubted a human's worth now began to whisper of his bravery, wisdom, and insight. One evening, after a long day of council meetings and diplomatic negotiations, the Queen and Daniel stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing city below. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky awash in stars. Serafina spoke quietly. "You have changed this palace, Daniel. Not through fear or power, but through courage and honesty. You remind us that the greatest strength is often unseen." Daniel looked at her, his heart swelling. "I only did what any human would do. I could not let harm come to you or to those who depend on you. I am honored to serve." Serafina's eyes sparkled. "And yet you have done more than serve. You have shown that a human's heart can inspire an entire empire. That is why I chose you." Daniel felt a mix of awe and humility. Across the vast galaxy from a small blue planet, he had traveled to a world of wonder, danger, and elegance. And now here he stood, recognized not for his strength or title, but for the qualities that defined humanity itself: courage, empathy, and integrity. The palace, once rigid and predictable, had begun to shift. Citizens, guards, and advisors alike whispered of the human who had captured the queen's heart. Rumors spread not as scandal but as awe, inspiring hope that perhaps two very different worlds could find common ground. In the quiet of the palace gardens, under the shimmering alien stars, Daniel and Serafina shared a rare moment of peace. She placed a hand lightly on his arm, and he felt the gravity of her trust, her respect, and the possibility of something more. "Whatever comes," she said softly, "we face it together. You a human and I a queen. The world may question us, but I do not. I choose you." Daniel nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a resolve as steady as hers. "Then I am with you, Serafina, always." And so the human diplomat, once an outsider in a palace of power and tradition, became more than an envoy. He became a symbol, a bridge between worlds, a testament to human courage and the chosen companion of an alien queen. The entire palace had been shocked by the confession, But as the days unfolded, they came to see what the Queen had already known, that the heart sees beyond species, beyond fear and beyond expectation. Together, they would navigate the challenges ahead, not as queen and subject, but as partners united by trust, respect, and the extraordinary strength of human spirit. And in doing so, they would change the course of two worlds forever.